God's story, your life. Unfolding short stories.
I come from a legacy of believers. I often say I drink from a well I didn't dig. And I am so blessed to be able to say that I was introduced to Jesus at a young age. My mother's parents met at a Moody Bible Institute rally in the 1940s, and they were instantly attracted to each other in the sense that, as my friend Tessa would say, their deep called to each other's deep. And my grandfather was a super musical person. He was a pastor of music in Chicago, in a church in Chicago, and my mom had the privilege and the gift to grow up in a household full of worship. And that was her upbringing. My grandfather played many instruments, and they sang. They sang with joy. They sang in habit. They sang probably when they didn't want to sing, but that was their reality. And so when I was a little girl, my mom introduced me and my sisters and my brother to all those beautiful traditional hymns that they grew up singing. And that was just part of our lives growing up. We grew up in a Bible-based church with traditional hymns, which is very different than my love language now. I'm a very contemporary worshiper, kind of the charismatic girl dancing crazy like David in the front. But those traditional hymns, they just have so much richness and roots in them. I lost my father, who was a lover of Christ and actually very tone deaf. This was not his gift, nor did he participate in the singing, but he enjoyed it. I lost my father when I was 18 years old of a cardiac arrest, and went through a dark time, as we all do, as we're all promised to go through hardship and trial and tribulation. And my mom didn't stop singing in those days. I mean, she lost the love of her life, the man she was married to for 30 years, but she still sang. And that was a testament in my life. And then fast forward 20 years, and my mom was diagnosed with cancer, an ongoing battle with cancer between the years of 2012 and 2020, off and on for 8 years, battling various forms of cancer. And God continued to say yes to extending her life. He continued to answer our prayers and heal her in various ways, and she kept singing. And then in the final days of her life in 2020, she started to show physical signs of what the cancer and the treatment for the cancer was doing inside of her. It was poison. It was poison on the inside, and then it became poison on the outside. And we saw the physical evidence of that, from boils on her skin to third-degree burns from the radiation, all the way up her legs to losing her hair to her fingernails decaying. If you've ever seen someone you love fight this disease, it's ugly, and you want to do everything you can to take it away. And she was on some severe pain medication. She was on morphine at first, and then it became a level of Dilaudid that was about 10 times the level of what a dosage of morphine would do, and she could still feel the pain. And so in the days where my mom was on hospice, we tried to give her as many forms of comfort in science and medicine that would take away her pain, because there was a point where she was begging the Lord to take her home, which is hard. And then we found ourselves begging the Lord to take her home, even though she was a light and a bright one in this world, just always pointing to Jesus. And the drugs started to fog her thinking, to the point where she was seeing things that I couldn't see, speaking to people I couldn't see were there, and just having illusions and not making sense anymore, just not making sense. And it was pretty difficult to bring her back to reality, to comprehend who you were, what you were doing, because she was so foggy on her medicine. But there's one thing that the enemy couldn't touch. He can touch our bodies. We live in a world of sin. That's been our reality since the fall of man, that we are going to suffer, and the enemy can touch our bodies. He can touch everything around us. He can whisper lies, and he can put fear in our minds. But when the Spirit of God lives inside of you, he can't even get close. He can't touch the Spirit of God. And my mom very clearly had the Spirit of God dwelling inside her. So even when she was unable to understand who was speaking to her, what her relationship was to you, to make sense of her surroundings or the people or what we were saying, if you played a hymn, if you started singing a song, that woman at 69 years old knew every single word. When her voice couldn't sing, her lips would move to the lyrics, and her hands would raise. And it was heaven on earth. I could see the Spirit of God alive in this failing body. And the Spirit of God was alive and well. She was singing to the Lord. I couldn't even remember all those lyrics in my coherent state, and she could, the lyrics from her childhood. And that's where I met my mom in her final days, singing in hospital beds and then in her home in hospice. That is how I connected with her, because as sisters in Christ, we are always connected. So I know when she entered through those pearly gates, I knew the first thing she was going to be doing that day was singing and dancing. So now, 3 years without her, every time I hear those hymns and I sing, I feel this ribbon around my heart connected to her. I'm tethered to my grandparents. I'm tethered to my parents, and I'm pulled away from this world just a little bit. And I'm happy with that. I look forward to the day he calls me home, although I have children to raise and a life to live here. But I rejoice in what he has given me, this heavenly perspective through suffering and through loss, because she did what he called her to do. She lived the life and the purpose that he intended for her, and she lived it joyfully. And even though she exited this world with a suffering body that failed her, her spirit soared, and that is a gift from him. We can rest in knowing that God has us. He answered my prayer. He answered my siblings' prayer. She was healed. She is healed today, and I'm so grateful for that lesson.
The Unfolding is a Wow God production, a ministry of the University of Northwestern St. Paul. Discover more at wowgod.com.